Okay, hi, how's it going? It's your friendly neighborhood Spidey here. Um, I'm sorry, I'm gonna do a lame thing. I am going to film and upload my April wrap up in 2 parts because I read 13 books in April. I should have filmed a part 1 wrap up in the middle of April, but I didn't because I didn't think that I would honestly read this much. So, yeah. So I'm just going to talk about the first 6 or 7 books right now, and I'm going to want to do it sort of quickly because I got my wisdom teeth out a week ago and talking sort of hurts. So, the first book that I read in April was The Baby Plane by Kate Rorick. This book follows 3 women, all of whom become pregnant, sort of like at the same time as one another, and it kind of follows their relationships with one another, and because they're all in like different positions in their life and in their pregnancies, like they're all like differently planned pregnancies and whatnot. That sounds so weird. I'm sorry. So there's 3 women. There's Natalie, who is in her 30s. She has been married for I think at least 10 years. And she and her husband have been trying for a baby for the past like 4 or 5 years, and she previously had an ectopic pregnancy. There is Lindy, who is Natalie's younger half sister, who is in her early 20s. She is dating her roommate, and is like sort of like unsure of like what her career is going to be and like what she's going to do with her life. She sort of like is one of those like millennials who like did a lot of things in college and like has done a lot of things post college and doesn't really seem like she has her life together. And the third woman is not related to Natalie or Lindy. I think she like gets flowers delivered from the flower shop that Lindy works at. I think, and her daughter is in Natalie's class. I think like that's her relation to Natalie and Lindy. But this other woman, Sophia or Sonia, I don't remember. It was so long ago. I think it was Sophia. Sophia had a daughter when she was in her teens, and now that her daughter is a teenager, she's dating and has become pregnant again. So each of these women are like in very different places in their lives, in regards to like pregnancy and motherhood, anyways. And they're all like seen sort of differently, as to where they are, and like this book kind of really like deeply explores like not only like their relationships with one another and their relationships with their mothers and with like in Sophia's case her child, her daughter, but like also like how like society and like the relationship towards motherhood in society, and it's very good. I loved this book. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was amazing. And when I was done reading it and I added it to my Goodreads, I realized, sorry, that's gross. I realized that the author, Kate Rorick, worked on the Lizzie Bennet Diaries here on YouTube, and I was like, oh, that's why it was so good. So take that as you will. The second book that I read in April was The Pisces by Melissa Broder. I did not like The Pisces. I gave it 2 stars. So The Pisces follows a woman named Lucy who is in her late 30s and following a particularly traumatic breakup. She ends up moving to her sister's house for the summer to house sit and dog sit while her sister and her husband are like traveling through Europe or something. It's not really important. While she's like living in her sister's beach house, she meets this merman, and this is a book about mermaid fucking. I mean, like that's I'm sure you've heard of it before. It's kind of been like a thing. I think it was like longlisted for the Women's Prize. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, did not like this book. I think most people either didn't like this book or really like this book. That's kind of the impression that I've been getting from like the discourse online. I found the main character Lucy, her narration, her like internal monologue is like just very abrasive. Like it's the only really word that I can describe it. She's not sympathetic towards anyone in her thoughts. And it's really hard to read. Just for that alone. She's not really likable. And like not that I like need my characters to be likable, but I really didn't like her tone, and I really didn't like how she was like thinking about like the other people in the novel, and like she's very uncharitable and very unsympathetic, and abrasive. And also like the book, like the text of the book was like made up very much of questions. Like this entire book was very insistent in its questioning of like, what is love? What is obsession? Is it worth it if we can't tell the difference? Like this book was like exploring these ideas, and almost entirely Lucy's inner monologue was made up of like her asking questions, of her posing questions about these themes. And I did not enjoy reading this book. I didn't. But I am glad that I finished it, because I think the end made the book. Like the end, like the last 20 pages definitely gave this book an extra star. If it hadn't been for the last 20 pages, definitely would have been 1 star. Definitely would have regretted the entire experience. As it is, I don't regret the entire experience. I think the ending really, really saved this book. The way I described the ending, and like I'm not gonna spoil it. Like it is kind of a spoiler, and I think it's really good. I think it's a really good ending. But the way the book ends is like the entire book has just been this like very insistent, abrasive questioning about love and obsession, and like the last 20 pages is just like barely beginning to answer those questions. And I think it really worked, and I really loved the ending. That being said, I was like over halfway through the book when I realized like I'm just not enjoying reading this, and I decided to power through. But if you like just like get like the Kindle, the like free Kindle sampler or whatever, and you're really not enjoying it, I wouldn't. I don't think it's that worth it. But in the end, I am glad that I finished the book. So there's that. Let's see. The next book that I read was This Isn't the Life I Ordered. Setting Sail when your relationship fails, by Jennifer Weigel. I hated this book. Oh God. So like the subtitle, Setting Sail when your relationship fails, like sort of gives the impression that this book would be like exploring like how Weigel coped after her marriage failed. That's not what this book is about. Weigel essentially, like tangentially, she'll like mention sometimes like that she's trying to deal with her divorce, but like this book is not about her dealing with her divorce. This book is about Weigel after her divorce. She decides to pursue this like very like wishy-washy, woo-woo, like very obviously like scam coping methods. Like, I mean, they're not even coping methods. I don't know how to describe. Yeah. So she's like seeing like mediums and crap, and it's like, but like it's worse than that. It's worse than that. So like for the most part, like I was like I don't agree with this, but like I'm fine with it for like the most of the book. But then at one point, like in the middle, or like maybe like towards the end of the book, Weigel and a friend of hers decide to go on this juice cleanse, right? And Weigel, like, this is not like the exact quote, but it's as close as I can remember. Weigel says, "Some people go on juice cleanses to lose weight. We weren't doing this. We were just doing it to clear toxins from our body." And I'm like, bitch, like, do not lie to me right now. Like, I know you're doing this to lose weight. I know you're doing it to lose weight. Like, and I know that you're lying to me right now. And the fact that you're not being honest with me just, like, completely turned me off. And I was, like, unwilling to, like, take her word for what she was saying from that point on, because I knew she was lying to me. I knew she was not being straight with me. And then after that, like, the whole, like, last portion of the book was, like, talking about this guy called John the God, who's, like, a Brazilian, like, spiritual, like, healer or something, who's, like, obviously just, like, scamming vulnerable people. But, like, Weigel was, like, and Weigel's also, like, a journalist, and, like, I think that's kind of why I'm, like, so angry that she wrote this book, and she wrote it so authoritatively, and she wrote it, like, as though it, like, all this crap was real when it's obviously not. But, like, yeah, like, no, so, and she's, like, just, like, very, like, authoritatively and very, like, journalistically, like, talking about this John the God and his spiritual healing, and, like, how when she went, like, there was, like, someone else in the crowd, and, like, after she saw him, there were, like, scars on her hip. Oh my God, spiritual healing, it's real. Like, no, it's fucking not. No, it's fucking not. Just, I'm so angry. I'm so angry about this. I should not have read it. It was not, I'm not the audience for this book. I knew, like, all of the stuff that she was talking about was scams. And, like, I was not willing to play ball with any of it. But, yeah, so did not enjoy that one. Yeah. See, the next book that I read was The Bad Seed by Jory John and illustrated by Pete Oswald. This is just a children's book. It's very cute. It has a nice little message to it. It's it took me like a half hour. I really don't have anything to say about it. I gave it like 4 stars because it was pretty enjoyable. The next book that I read, this is one that I actually owned. All the previous ones were from the library except for The Bad Seed, which was on my Kindle. The next book that I read was The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. So I had wanted to read the book before the 3rd season of the television show comes out this June. Get it? June? Get it? Anyways. Surprised they hadn't been doing that from the beginning. So I wanted to read the book before the 3rd season came out because I love the show. The show is so good. And I was sort of afraid when I went into the book that the show would have, like, ruined it for me. Because the show is so good. I think that, like, the book is, like, pretty equal to the show. I think they're pretty equal. I think if the show goes on for longer, the show will end up becoming worse, and then the book will be better, because I think the creator of the show says he has, like, 10 seasons planned out. That's, like, way too many seasons. Sorry. But yeah. So, I mean, reading the book, like, I could definitely see, like, some of those powerful moments from the show where they had been, like, lifted directly from the text. And I mean, also, like, the book and the show are, like, able to accomplish different things, and they're also, like, aiming to accomplish different things. Like, the show is very much, like, telling the story in, like, a post-Trump world, right? Like, it just is. And the show's aware of that. So, like, the show has, like, kind of, like, that in mind as it's going forward. And the book was written from the stance of, when people say it can't happen here, Margaret, I was like, oh, bitch, it can happen here. It can happen here. Let me show ya. So like, that was, like, Atwood's attitude, like, was more, like, hypothetical, whereas I think, like, the show was, like, being like, oh, it has happened here a little bit. So they're obviously like aiming for different things, and also like the show is able to like pull away from Jude's perspective and like go like look at other people's people's perspectives and like give other characters interiority and motivation and whatnot. So like the show we're able to pull away from June and like really like deeply look at Janine and like figure out like what's going on in Janine's head and why is Janine the way she is. And in the book we're very deeply embedded in Fred's perspective, and Fred is not necessarily interested in making sure that Janine has clear interiority and motivations to the reader. Like that's not Fred's primary concern, and that's fine. And I think the book is really good, and I highly recommend it. And it was a very good read. Read it, please. I'm sorry, that was a bad description review. I don't. The next book I read was Saga Volume 3. Saga is awesome. Again, this was a reread. Also, Saga Volume 4 was a reread that I read this month already in May. Yeah, Saga's dope. Nothing more to say about it, really. It's just awesome. You should read it. It is NSFW, though, so beware. And then the next book that I read in May, and the next book that I read in April, I'm sorry, that was, and I can't edit this. The next book that I read in April, I'm so sorry, was $2 a Day, Living on Almost Nothing in America by Catherine Eden. So my local library, I like signed up for like their adult reading program, and it like kind of like had me like select like whether I'm interested in like people focused or like plot driven like books or like whatever, and I said like I think I said yes to all of them. And so I've been getting emails through that program of like book recommendations, and most of them like aren't very personalized, but it sent me this recommendation. I was like, this is actually really interesting, I want to read this. So I checked it out and I read it, and this is a nonfiction book. Eden went through, and I think she followed around 20 families living in deep poverty in America, living on less than $2 per person per day. Oh my god. It was snowing outside yesterday, so that's what's going on out there. Snow is falling. Anyways, so $2 a day. Yeah, so I think Eden followed like around 20 families, and she explained in like the introduction how it's very difficult to do this sort of like qualitative research on poverty, because like to actually like research like these families, you need to like, the researcher really needs to sit with them and gain their trust and actually like gain their stories in order to like plot actual human data about them. And it's much easier to just do very surface level like survey type research. And so Eden like did this very deep qualitative like trust gaining research with 20 families, and I think she featured 8 of them in the book. And just really talked about poverty in America and how these families slipped into, or more accurately, were born into and have been unable to break out of this deep poverty, and how like welfare has just been like really failing to help these families, despite the fact that they want to work, right? Like and like they don't like want handouts. They want very simple things, right? Like one of the women, all she wanted was a place to live where she could like decorate her daughter's room with Dora the Explorer like wallpaper and stuff, and so that her daughter could like have that permanent place to live in, that permanent role model, and she just wanted like a job at Walmart, right? And it was really eye opening. It's hard to say I enjoyed the book because it was about such tragic circumstances, but it's really eye opening, and I'm really glad that I read it. And I think I gave that one 4 stars as well. Yeah, 4 stars. Yeah. So, I will be back later. I will rest my mouth, my speaking bits for a minute, and then I will be back and I will film part 2 at some later date. Alright, I'll see you then. Bye-bye.